Hello, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the conference so far. During the next 15 minutes, we're going to talk about Ukrainian IT ecosystem. We will mostly talk about things happening here locally. For those who don't know me, I'm founding and managing partner of Ventures Capital. We are early stage investors in IT internet companies here in Ukraine. Last year alone, we came across over 700 companies from here, and we do have a compelling story to tell you. I'm quite confident that many of you will learn new facts that might actually surprise you. The most important things you need to take as takeaway is that multi-billion IT industry exists already today. Ukraine already has over 100,000 software engineers who work in the described IT segments. What is also important, the local talent is not just abandoned, it's really world-class. To put you in a perspective, Ukraine now is #1 in Central Eastern Europe by number of engineers, and this army is still growing. Today we're going to talk about 4 market segments. Software outsourcing companies, those companies that have engineers here and do customer development of software for large European and US companies. Secondly is about research and development centers of large international technology players. Third, consumer internet, mostly e-commerce play. Last but not least, and will be my favorite part, we're gonna talk mostly, this is software technology companies from here that have R&D teams here, but succeed globally. So something that I see many entrepreneurs from Ukraine, so this might be encouraging part for you, that there are companies that can be located here and succeed globally. As I mentioned before, we have an army of engineers. 50,000 software engineers work in software outsourcing companies. Our engineers win various awards, and the talent really, world class. Best talent headhunted by hottest Silicon Valley startups. I know many engineers who leave for US every year, but luckily we have fairly number of good technical schools that continue to release new young engineers. The software industry today is 2 billion in Ukraine, growing still very fast and gonna double it over the next 3 years. Today, Ukraine already play a major role in global venture capital ecosystem. 100 international companies have research and development centers here in Ukraine. And Ukrainian engineers develop all variety of IT platforms, from enterprise software to e-commerce platforms, to mobile technology, to games. Few companies like Samsung have over 1,000 engineers, Netcracker 750, and few dozen, at least 100 engineers here in Ukraine. And those, what's important to emphasize, this is not just outsourcing. Those engineering talent develop here core technologies that's so important for the business of the company that they want to keep it in-house, to control it, not just outsource. UNET is an acronym that stands for Ukrainian Internet Users, like RUNET stands for Russian-speaking Internet Community. Ukraine has 46 million population, now 17 million Internet users. Good news. It's going to double over the next 5-6 years, so we see an explosion. We also see an explosion in e-commerce and consumer internet, which we are going to talk now. Just in 5 years, many investors I know talk about Russia e-commerce space, which is booming there. In Ukraine, it's also quite exploding. So in 5 years, this local size of the market going to be 10 billion. This is what in Russia today. So there is a lag, but we're catching up. We're seeing a large growth, and there's more like 100% per annum in verticals such as e-travel, clothes, apparel, sport goods, etc. Well, Ukraine is not Russia. It's a different country, but that's not the point of the slide, of course. All of you know that. But let me first emphasize what is common. Both countries have large army of high-quality software engineers. What is different, though, that venture capital ecosystem in Russia started to develop 15 years ago. 15 years ago was funds that could put few millions at seed stage, whether it was Yandex or Mail.ru, a few other companies. In Ukraine, few funds appeared really 2 years ago. So because of this, difference, Ukrainian companies didn't have access to capital. So many of them are bootstrapped and targeting global market. Because local market was not existing before. So the second distinctive advantage that a local market is really small, at least was some times ago. And in some way it helped. In some way it helped that Ukrainian engineers had to target global market from day one. This case is similar to Israel, that Israel software technology companies, when they build product, they mostly develop it for global market. So we argue that once the venture capital ecosystems develops and we'll see more and more money being invested here, more and more entrepreneurs being educated about venture capital and how it works, what it's for, we'll see more and more major successes in the country. So this is how venture capital ecosystem looks today. And I must emphasize, this is as of now, late 2013. Must tell you, if you would do this presentation 2 years ago, I would need to put 80% of all incubators, seed investors, Series A investors out of the slide. This year, I estimate the venture capital money invested here in Ukraine at 50 million, 50. Just 3 years ago, it was less than 10 million. So 5-time growth just in 3 years. We're seeing more and more interest from Russian funds to invest here. So at least 5-6 funds closed few deals here in Ukraine. We're seeing more and more interest from international funds like Intel, Bessemer, Excel, Runet to do Series B investments here. Intel actually made 2 Series A deals over the past couple of years. So who are those companies that perk interest of international funds? As I mentioned before, the local market was small. So really, the largest success stories we have, at least today, are those that succeed globally. Have a look at the companies' online services, mobile, software. Those companies we should really be proud of. E-commerce space is also booming, so we'll see more and more bigger exits, and there are already few fairly large companies there. Those who don't know some of these companies, for instance, Cupid is e-dating company, made an IPO a few years ago. Grammarly, #1 world spell checking service, R&D is based here in Kiev still, and few others. So where does this engineers or founders come from? The best technical institute in Kiev is Kiev Polytechnical Institute. So most of founders, a fairly large portion of funds, at least I met, come from this institute, and we have a fairly large portion of this company based in Kiev. Because building a really global technology company doesn't require just the technical skills, but also management, which is so far was easy to find in Kiev. What about the regions? Lviv, Odessa, Dnipropetrovsk, Kharkiv, and a few other destinations, few other cities, serve as headquarters for other software technology companies. We're already witnessing few big liquidity events. Just this week, Global Logic, one of the largest outsourcing company, was acquired for well over 400 million US. There was exit of Voodoo. Everybody probably by now knows about this story. And we're expecting a few more IPOs or large exits over the next 5 years. I just don't want to pitch about this company. They present in the main stage. You can hear the story, but just want to emphasize the company that was not existing 3 years ago, now at the growth stage, has well over 10 million in revenue, profitable revenue, growing very fast, and can make an exit or IPO within the next couple of years. So I want you to leave with few takeaways. First, multi-billion IT industry exists today, before any venture capital ecosystem was in place here. Ukraine today plays an important role in the global venture capital ecosystem. And we are #1 in Central Eastern Europe by number of engineers, and 4th position by number of IT specialists. Local market is booming. We're seeing more and more companies succeeding globally, reaching size 50, 100 million revenue or even more. Well, I run one of the funds here, and we're seeing that the venture capital ecosystem is really exploding. So we'll see major exits very soon. A lot of interesting startups right here in the Startup Alley too. So if you want to take a look at the presentation, you can download from our website to have a look at SlideShare. If you have any questions, you can always reach me. Here are my contact details. Thank you for attention.
Does anybody, let's do questions for a couple minutes if anybody has questions, okay? Anybody have any questions? I can't believe it again. Aren't you guys learning from me? Okay, so I guess I'm going to do the questions, but I'm going to come and pick on a couple of you guys. We've got about 10 minutes or so.
Okay,
right?
sure.
We did a very efficient presentation. Now we have extra time.
I was told I got 15 minutes, so I need to be efficient.
Okay, that's good. You're very efficient. Okay, so yes, question. Fantastic. Is that on? Hang on. My fault. Wait until the green comes. Hang on, there you go.
Evgeny, thanks a lot for your speech. It's really great research. I have a little small question about your fund. Can you name some, do you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, I do hear, but the thing is that organizers do not allow to promote any company, so you're welcome to talk to me after the presentation.
Okay, thanks a lot. So anyway, thanks a lot for your research. As I know, it's the only one for today in Ukraine. Well done. Thanks once again.
So there's
Thank
what
you.
was that? You can't ask a question. Private questions. Oh, I like asking the private questions.
I mean, we're early stage Series A and seed internet IT companies. That's, you can find out easily at our website.
Does anybody else have questions? So in the last couple of years, you were telling us about the growth in Ukrainian startups, the growth in opportunities, which is fantastic. I didn't see the slide, but has it exponentially grown or exponentially changed? Is it 6 months ago, 8 months ago, 2 months ago? Roughly when are we seeing the tipping points for growth?
We have to divide. First, the IT sector itself grew well over 10 years, so it started 10 years ago.
But the entrepreneurial side, the startup side.
Can we have the presentations?
It's way past it.
So essentially, the outsourcing industry, for instance, started to develop early 2000s.
Not the ISOR, just the entrepreneurs.
Entrepreneur side, I see an explosion from mid-2000 to 5, 6, 7.
Okay.
At least the largest success stories were, founded 2005, 6, or 7. So it took 5, 6, 7 years to succeed. An explosion of venture capital, money invested probably last year, and we're now on this curve.
Okay.
So 3 years ago, 10 million. Last year, at least 25. This year, at least 50.
As investments.
As investments.
Okay. But the entrepreneurial DNA, forget about the VC for now. The entrepreneurial DNA, if it's starting in the last 2 years, do you see it doubling each year or exponentially growing?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually meant that entrepreneurial, at least number of startups that, were founded, it started to explode in 2007, 8, 9, and then there was a catch-up. So, and that means that actually that time was no money. So most of companies reaching Series A sometimes are profitable. It's like, this is not what happens in other parts of the world.
Sure, that's great. So aside from venture capital, what do you think could exponentially help the ecosystem grow?
One distinguished advantage, which something to improve for local entrepreneurs, particularly for Ukraine, even compared to Russia, it is have more ambitions. To be much more ambitious than just, okay, well, I do something for Ukraine, I will here, and I'll be doing fine. Also, there are fairly large companies that worth maybe 50 million, but can get to 1 billion size if they would do it differently. So please have more ambition.
Okay, so when you talk about ambition, because I agree with you, when you talk about ambition, can you think of maybe a couple very actionable suggestions in your mind? Because ambition is great, it's a very big topic, right? Is there some steps that you can think about or some ideas of advice?
Well, there's a basic rule. If you're software technology companies, do product for US market or global market. Do not, benchmark, other software technology applied here. You have to, before you build up a product, you have to physically fly to US. You have to meet the competitors' clients and find out. So essentially, your product have to be competitive globally. Because if you do it other way, when at the time when you conquered Ukraine, it might be too late, or your not product would be competitive enough for global market.
So why do some entrepreneurs not think about the global market? Do you think it's a cultural issue, or is it an access issue, or what do you think it is?
Well, in my view, there is trade-off. If you want to make it big, there is also much high risk attached. So I would not say that it's for everybody. It's like everybody should have an ambition, but it's just a trade-off. If you already built, some success stories, you buy the next company, and most of successful entrepreneurs, I have to emphasize, typically are serial entrepreneurs. There are still succeeded from first time, but many of those are serial entrepreneurs. So next time you just, can do it differently. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Is there for the startups, are there certain sectors that excite the most entrepreneurs here? Are there certain areas? Is it security? Is it big data? Is there anything that you see as becoming the big trend from this region?
Well, unfortunately, I have not come across many big data startups.
Anything, what would be
and
the
the
verticals?
reason, but I wanted to come to the reason.
Okay.
People here, until even today, the largest seed round you can raise here is maybe 1 million. That would be max you can raise at seed stage. On average, like 200K. So you cannot target those segments which are capital intensive from day one. So to build a meaningful product in enterprise software, big data, a few others, it takes even millions at the seed stage. So entrepreneurs here mostly look for some niches, whether it's in a mobile app or cool online service or games or local e-commerce space. They want to have a product, minimal viable product with minimal investments. So they try and, this is cool to think about big ideas and change the world, but before that you need a successful minimal viable product and pilot here.
So any other questions from the audience? I've got more, I can keep on going. And if that's what you like, I can do that. Good. Shit, you have another mic over here, does that work? I'm telling you, I'm going to hurt myself.
Yevgeny, thank you very much for your presentation and answering all these questions. So, in addition to the lack of investment, the size of investment, what are other issues and difficulties the industry has here, and how these issues can be solved?
That's a good question.
I just trying to think about some particular context. It's also sometimes about entrepreneurs being educated enough, because not everybody is for venture capital, as we had one discussion earlier today. So, and entrepreneurs really need to be more integrated. So, for instance, I see in many entrepreneurs not just live in the country, not trying to get more exposed to what is happening globally. So I would encourage many entrepreneurs to be more often physically in the US and find out what's going on there. So one challenge I'm personally experiencing is entrepreneurs are not being educated enough what they're doing. Sometimes you come and say, look, you have a really cool product, let's scale it, and say, we invest up to 2 million, for instance, and say, hey, I don't need money, I'm profitable, I'm done, I'm doing well, so why I would do it in the first place? So that's challenge is entrepreneurs need to be educated, but this again correlates with ambitions part.
Okay, thank you very much. Fantastic presentation.